Welcome into Tippernaught Sports. It is finally week one of the regular season. We're going to be talking regular season tip-off, injury report, a lot of people out right now, playoff predictions for both the East and West, and then we'll close out the show talking award predictions. If you have not subscribed to the channel yet, go ahead and join the team. And with that being said, let's lob it over and talk some regular season tip-off. This video should be dropping on Monday, Tuesday, October 22nd. We finally got NBA regular season basketball with the TNT doubleheader, Knicks Celtics in TD Garden. Personally, I kind of hope the Knicks come out there and stun the Celtics. We'll talk playoff predictions later, but Knicks Celtics, they are near the top of that list in the Eastern Conference. And also for this, I'm really excited to just overreact to all of the games, whether it's biggest winners, biggest losers in this first week of the regular season. Just so ready to overreact. And whether that's winning titles or people being last place in the league, excited to get that after the first week. The other half of the TNT doubleheader is going to be Wolves, Lakers, and Crypto.com Arena in LA. Excited for this one. Young versus old. Ant-Man going on to take on LeBron. And also some Kentucky bigs battling it out. Anthony Davis and Julius Randle. So excited for that one. Anytime you have Ant-Man or LeBron playing, it's always a good game to watch. But having them together first night of the regular season, I think is going to be electric. Some other games later in the week, we've got Wednesday, Bucks 76ers. Thursday, we've got Thunder and Nuggets in Denver. That should be a great game. Some Western Conference contenders for sure. Thunder, they finished first last year regular season. Nuggets, they did not. But I think with Nikola Jokic, they're always going to be a contender. Friday, we've got a Pacers-Knicks matchup. Super excited for that. Playoff rematch in Madison Square Garden. And then Suns-Lakers, KD versus LeBron. Same thing we said with Ant-Man and LeBron. They're great anytime they're playing, but together that's going to be must-watch TV. Saturday, Mavs, Suns, Luka, and Booker. Maybe a little early season hostility. And then Sunday, I didn't even think about this. Luka and Clay having a little beef with Booker potentially. That'll be a good game. That one's on Saturday. And then Sunday, we've got Warriors-Clippers. Really, I'm just excited for Warriors basketball. Clippers, that might be without Kawhi, so not as star-studded, but I think that'll still be a good Western Conference matchup, Warriors-Clippers, and that one's at Chase Center. So that's talking a little bit of the regular season tip-off. So excited. We essentially have NBA basketball for the next, 7.5 months, regular season basketball now through April. So we got November, December, January, February, March, and I think the first part of April. So we pretty much have 6 months straight of regular season basketball. And then when do the playoffs actually start? The play-in is April 15th to 18th, and then the playoffs officially begin April 19th. So we got so much basketball ahead of us. Super excited to see what goes on with the season, what storylines unfold, which teams really rise up. Maybe they didn't do so well competitive last year, and they take a big jump this year. Which teams slump a little bit, because I think there will be some movement in both the East and West. So I'm just so excited for regular season, for NBA to be back. It feels like it's been an eternity. Let's lob it over and let's talk some injury report. Not the funnest thing in the world, but there are a lot of people out. So let's lob it over and talk about that. The injury report right now is a pretty large list. It's not massive, but there are a lot of big names that are out right now and key role players. We'll start off with Porzingis. His is a foot injury, expected to be out until at least December 1st per CBS Sports. And just reading, also I think straight from CBS, after winning his first title with the Celtics, Porzingis spent his offseason recovering. He went under the knife shortly after the team's victory parade through Boston to repair a torn, I got no idea what this stuff is, retinaculum, probably butchered that, and dislocated posterior tibialis tendon, which he suffered in Game 2 of the finals. So he's got a foot injury. He'll be back, expected to be back maybe December, early December. Last year, he averaged 20 points, 7 rebounds, and 2 assists. So definitely a key player for the Celtics. I think they still win plenty of games. I think they are potentially still the best team in the league without Porzingis. But I think definitely he gives a little bit of cushion and elevates them a lot. So key piece for them. Moving on to Max Strus. He has a knee injury expected to be out until at least December 1st. Last year, he averaged a career-high 12.2 points per game and also career-high in minutes with 32 a game. So I feel like I had second half of the season last year, I was doing highlight videos, and I feel like I had a highlight night from him very often. I could be making things up, but Strus, I think he can shoot the lights out. Hopefully he has a healthy, speedy recovery. For the Mavs, Dante Exum, I don't think he played a huge amount of minutes, but I know he was a key player for them last year. His is a wrist injury, expected to be out until at least January 20th, so a little bit longer for him. He did shoot 49% from three last season, and I don't think he shot a massive volume, but he shot over 100. So great sharpshooter for the Mavs. Hopefully he'll be back late January. G.G. Jackson for the Grizzlies. Return expected late December. Last year as a rookie, he averaged 14.6 points per game. Obviously, that was an injury-ridden Grizzlies team with Marcus Smart and Ja Morant. So I'm curious if he's going to maintain a strong role with Morant and Smart's returns. But he had a great rookie campaign. For the Clippers, we got Kawhi Leonard. This one not looking great right now. I think indefinite. On I think CBS Sports, it said expected to be out until at least November 2nd. I think that was just a semantic thing, saying maybe he'll be reevaluated then. But I think the verbiage going around right now is indefinite. Last year, he played in a lot of games last year, 68 and averaged 23.7. So without him, obviously Clippers lost Paul George. So I think the Clippers have a rough season if Kawhi Leonard's not in the lineup. I think James Harden can still be a very potent offensive player and get other people going. But I just think without Kawhi, I see them slipping down a lot in the Western Conference. Lakers, they have two big injuries right now, Jared Vanderbilt and Christian Wood. Vanderbilt's expected to be out until at least November 4th, and Christian Wood also until at least November 4th. I don't know if those are exact return dates, expected return dates, or if it's just reevaluating, but at the very least until November. Vanderbilt is a foot injury. In 2023, he only played in 26 games, and then last season only 29 games. So hopefully he has a much healthier season ahead. Because the Lakers are so much better defensively with Vanderbilt in the lineup, and he plays with so much energy and intensity. You want to see him out there, and all of these players you want to see him out there. You don't want to see anybody hurt. Wood, knee injury, expected to be out. We already said that November 4th. Curious about if he will have higher production or if it's just going to be picking up minutes here and there. He in 2023 with the Mavs, he averaged 16.6 points per game, but last year dropped down to 6.9 with the Lakers. So curious if that production goes up or not. But if those two can come back, Jared Vanderbilt and Christian Wood, I do think the Lakers are a much better team with those two there. Mitchell Robinson with the Knicks, ankle expected to be out until at least December 1st. The Knicks are a little thin at center at the moment. Their centers right now are Jericho Sims, starting center Karl-Anthony Towns, Jericho Sims, and then their rookie Ariel Huckporty. And so they're a little thin there. Sims, I feel like every time I watched him, he did look extremely athletic. It was just kind of utility center. He came in, played really hard, full out effort, so he was a great choice. But I think if the Knicks can get Mitchell Robinson back, it sounds like early December, that's going to elevate them because their starting lineup right now is very, very strong. Just got to see what happens with the bench depth. So speaking of centers, Isaiah Hartenstein coming from the Knicks would have solved a little bit of their thinness at center position. But Isaiah Hartenstein on the Thunder has a hand injury expected to be out until at least December 3rd. That's going to be when he comes back, sounds like at sometime early December, that's going to be a huge addition for the Thunder. I won't say the Thunder are thin at center, but it's going to be very interesting between Chet Holmgren and Williams, what that lineup looks like or what those combinations look like with Hartenstein in the mix, because he's plays more of the true center and the other two play more of a power forward center role. So when Hartenstein comes back for the Thunder, I think that's going to be very exciting to watch because they're already a good team and they're adding Hartenstein, who's a great player, comes in, plays with a ton of effort, and just every time he's on the floor, I feel like he's going 110%. Next up on the list, I had Paul George and Embiid. We'll talk about them last. Said they're not necessarily injured right now, but just talking about potential really not playing back-to-back. So we'll get to that in a second. For the Trailblazers, Shadon Sharp has a shoulder injury, expected to be out until at least November 4th. Last year was a huge improvement for Sharp from his rookie season. In his first year, he averaged 9.9 points per game and improved to 15.9 last season. And part of that could have just been an increase in minutes. Rookie season was 22 a game, and last year was 33. But he had a much better season last year as far as production goes. And I know he had some wild... He was dunking on people last year. He had so much bounce. Super athletic. But hopefully he comes back early, mid-November. Devin Vassell for the Spurs. Foot injury expected to be out until at least November 2nd. Seems like early November is a key date for a lot of these people. And again, not sure if that is necessarily the expected return or if that's just being reevaluated. But Vassell is going into his fifth season. Averaged 19.5 points per game last season. And with Vassell in the lineup, the Spurs are not on paper a bad team right now, especially with the addition of Harrison Barnes and Chris Paul. I'm very high on the Spurs right now. We'll talk playoff predictions and who's making the playoffs, and whether the Spurs will be in that mix or not. But Vassell for the Spurs expected to be back early November. Malcolm Brogdon for the Wizards. Thumb expected to be out until at least November 10th. So maybe he doesn't have a ton of availability. I know he's been kind of injury-ridden there for a while. But I think for the Wizards, just having a veteran presence around, I think will be good, especially for Sarr and developing that young talent. Really getting some vets around Kuzma and Poole. And then Saddiq Bey also for the Wizards. I just think I like Saddiq Bey. I think see if I can pull up his stats real quick. He hasn't had just incredibly high production, but I do think he's an impactful player when he's on the floor, plays hard. Let's see, what were his stats? For Atlanta last year, played 63 games. He averaged 13.7 last year, 6.5 rebounds, 1.5 assists in 32 minutes. So not bad. Excited for, hopefully he comes back. What was his expected return date? December 3rd. Yeah, early, mid-December. And then last thing we'll talk about in this injury report section, Paul George and Embiid. So neither of them are, Paul George might miss the season opener, but it sounds like he's going to be okay. But the big thing here is that definitely Embiid, and it sounds like probably Paul George, not going to be playing back-to-backs this season. Per CBS Sports, 76ers will have 15 back-to-backs. So that's taking out 15 games that Paul George and Embiid are playing. And my first question with that was, if they have a back-to-back, will they go all in on one of the games and have PG and Embiid play, or will they split it? Embiid plays one game, Paul George plays the other. Either way, I think the 76ers still win a lot of games, whether it's hopefully they have Embiid and Paul George in a lot of their regular season games. But I think with that, I think they will drop a lot of games in the regular season. And I mean, adding a new piece, hopefully they get enough reps and enough games to have a lot of chemistry going into the playoffs, and so that they can still be a big contender. And even maybe if they drop more games and they're not a top 3 seed, if they're a 4, 5, 6, or even in the play-in, but they have Paul George and Embiid healthy in the postseason, maybe that is worth it. Because when Embiid's healthy, he is an incredibly potent offensive player and dominant. So maybe it's worth not having as dominant of a regular season if that means, well, I think it definitely is if you get to the postseason and have both of those players healthy. So that'll be interesting to see over the course of the season what the back-to-backs look like as far as playing both of them for one of the games, splitting it, if they're still able to win a lot of games without those two, and then if they are in a position to be solidly in the playoffs, 1 through 6, one of those seeds, and then hopefully be healthy and have a big run in the postseason. All right, that was the injury report. There are more people injured, but that was just a list of some of the key players. Let's lob it over and talk about some playoff predictions for both the East and Western Conference. How do we want to do this? Start with the East or start with the West? I think let's start with the East, mainly because the West is just completely stacked, so we'll do that one second. let's go through the Eastern Conference. The way I'll do this, we'll start with 1, and we'll just go 1 through 10. And when we get to the people missing the playoffs completely, 11 through 15, I probably won't give a placement there. I'll just say these are the 5 teams that I have missing the playoffs and play-ins completely. So number 1 in the East, I have the New York Knicks. Last year they finished in second, and I think we'll talk about Celtics. They were first last year. But with the Knicks, I love their starting lineup or potential starting lineup. Brunson at the 1, Hart at the 2, OG Anunoby, Mikal Bridges at the 3 or 4, and then Karl Anthony Towns at the 5. I think that's a stacked lineup and is very solid offensively and defensively. So I think they win a ton of regular season games and play hard, and that's kind of what Thibs does when they get into the regular season. Is the starters, they play a ton of minutes. They don't really load manage a whole lot. So I think Knicks, if they can stay healthy, I have them winning the most games in the Eastern Conference. And then in second place, I have the Celtics dropping down from first last year. The main reason being, I think they are in a position where they know they're very strong and can experiment, and they've said things like that. The whole thing with Jaylen Brown saying, I think it was against the Pistons, maybe they play through Peyton Pritchard, but I do think they're in a position where they can experiment and still win a lot of games, but because of that experimentation, I think they drop down a little bit, so I have them in second place. For the Celtics, last year, they did keep all their key pieces, or most of them. They were first in offensive rating and second in defensive rating, so last year they were ridiculous. I think they still are, and I don't think that the Knicks are there's a big gap. I think it's probably a game or two, 1 to 3 games between the Knicks and Celtics, first and second. But either way, those are the top 2 teams in the East last year. I just have them flip-flopping. Curious to see if there's going to be any, drama's not the right word, but maybe friction or power struggle between Brown and Tatum, with Brown not making the Olympic team, Derek White making it over Brown, and then Tatum getting less playing time than Derek White. I think they say it all the time, like winning cures all, but I am curious if there's any friction over the course of the year among the team with Tatum, Brown, and White. So curious with that. Either way, I think they have a very successful season, finish second in the East. In third, okay, so I was supposed to post this video last week, but my hard drive crashed. So I adjusted some of the predictions. So the team I had in third is no longer in third. So who I have in third now, we've got the Cavaliers. They were fourth last year. Darius Garland, Donovan Mitchell, Mobley, Jared Allen. I think they have a great lineup. I'm curious if they can take that leap and be a true contender in the East, especially once it gets to the postseason. But I think the Cavaliers, they have a great lineup. I think they win a lot of games, and I have them moving up to third. I had them in fourth previously, but have a team dropping down. You probably know who it is. It'll be a minute before we get to them. But Cavaliers bumping up to third from last year. Great lineup, great young talent, great core. So in fourth, we've got the Bucks. They were third last year, had them falling down a little bit. I think Giannis has an MVP caliber season, and I think that's enough to keep the Bucks from falling out of the top 5. I think I am curious, year 2 of Damian Lillard and Giannis, a tandem. Dame can shoot the lights out. Giannis is unstoppable when he goes towards the rim, but he's been adding a lot of mid-range, or at least has been more consistent with the mid-range. So I think Giannis has an incredible year and keeps the Bucks from falling off quite a bit. At number 5, I have the Miami Heat. I just think they're a very gritty team, and they get a little bit of their swagger back. With them, I think I might be being a little bit biased. One of the things I saw last week, it was a GM survey, and pretty much everybody said the best coach in the NBA right now is Eric Spoelstra, and then saw another graphic that was playoff percentage chance to make the playoffs, and the Heat were very high, like 60-70%. So I think maybe I'm being a little biased right now, or influenced by outside things, but I do think the Heat have a really good year. Butler contract year. I believe he's on a contract year. Pretty sure he is. I think they come out, they don't play any games, they win a lot of games and are very competitive. In 6th, I have the Pacers. They're maintaining from 6th last year. They're a very interesting team. Last season, they had the second highest pace in the league, and they were only behind the Wizards, which makes sense. Kuzma and Poole probably jacking it up, taking the shots. And they had the second best offensive rating, but from offensive to defensive, so offensive rating second, defensive rating was 24th in the league. So I think the reason I have them at 6 and maintaining is I think the defense kind of is what it is. I think their MO is going to be playing really fast offense, scoring a lot of points, and then the defense side of the ball not being as locked down. So I think the offense maybe declines a little bit. Like maybe people have a full season of film that they can watch. But I do think the Pacers either maintain or honestly, I had them slipping down originally before I made the change this week. So hopefully offensive maintains or improves. If the defense could improve a little bit, that would go a long way for the Pacers. In 7th, I have the 76ers. Last week I had them in 3rd, but with all of the things about Embiid and Paul George not playing back-to-backs, I think the 76ers have some turbulence this year. They still have between Maxey, Embiid, and Paul George, that's still a great focal point for the team. It's just, are they going to get enough games together with Paul George in the mix? Back-to-backs, they have 15. We said that earlier, 15 back-to-backs this season, so they're missing at least 15 games out of that. And curious if the supporting cast can fill that void whenever they're missing either Paul George or Embiid. Supporting cast for them, they've got Reggie Jackson, Andre Drummond, Kyle Lowry, Kelly Oubre, Caleb Martin, Eric Gordon. So that's a solid supporting cast, and they really might need to do some heavy lifting this year. But I've got them slipping down quite a bit from where I originally had them, from 3rd all the way down to 7th, just factoring in the Paul George and Joel Embiid kind of load management going on. In 8th, I feel weird about this one because I have the Orlando Magic in 8th. They were 5th last year. I could see them being 8th. I could see them being a top 3 team in the Eastern Conference. They essentially are the flip side of the Pacers. The Pacers were incredible offensively and defensive, not as strong. For the Magic, they were 22nd in offensive rating, but 3rd in defensive rating. Okay, and the one thing I think defensively, I think they're going to be a really good team again. I think the offensive, hopefully they can improve. I think if they don't improve their offensive rating, but maintain their defense, I think they probably slip down still. But for them, if they could improve their offense a little bit and maintain defensive rating, I think if they do that, I'll be way off on this 8th place prediction. If they do that, they could be top 3, top 5 easily. And they have some key additions. I think it was KCP. I think that's a great pickup, really, for any team. He's just so versatile, and I think he improves everybody around him, plays great defense, consistent on offense. But the Magic, I have them slipping down to 8th. Probably, I could definitely see myself being way off with them. But the Eastern Conference this year, I think, is a lot more well-rounded than it was. And I think the Celtics are definitely still the team to beat. But I think they could definitely get beat this year. So it's nice to see the East being more well-rounded, similar to the West last year, and looks like again this year. In 9th, the last 2 play-in spots in the East, I have Trae Young and the Hawks. I think he has a great year, and still similar to what I said with Giannis and the Bucks. Giannis having a great year and keeping them from falling out of the top 5. I think Trae Young has a great season, and that's still just good enough to get them to 9th. And that's not against Trae Young. I think that's just personally where I think the Hawks are right now. But hopefully it would be awesome to see Trae Young have a great season, shoot, be a playmaker, make a ton of threes. I think the league's way more exciting whenever Trae Young's having a good year. So Hawks, they're going to be in 9th. They were in 10th last year, so bumping up a little bit. And then my 10th place prediction, I'm going against the grain on this one, and maybe it doesn't happen, but I think the Pistons are making the play-ins. I have the Pistons at 10th. Cade Cunningham, Jaden Ivey, Asar Thompson, Tobias Harris, Jalen Duren. That's a great core. And then off the bench, Tim Hardaway Jr., Malik Beasley. I love the move of bringing in some vets, helped develop the talent on the team, the young talent, and similar to what the Spurs did in the West. But I don't know. I think the Pistons are going to come out. They're going to play with an edge. They have a chip on their shoulder. I could be way off on this. Maybe they still don't win a ton of games, but I am making the prediction the Pistons are going to have a way better season, and they're going to win enough games to make the play-ins in the East. So the 5 teams I have left out of the playoff or play-in for the East, I've got the Bulls. They were 9th last year, so I have them falling out completely. I could be wrong on that one, though, because Zach LaVine and Kobe White, they've looked good. And really, I think if they play awesome, they can elevate that team a lot. And, I mean, really, 10th place, they could easily move into 10th over the Pistons. The Nets, Raptors, Wizards, and Hornets. Out of those teams, I feel like the Hornets could make some noise. Raptors could get hot. They definitely have some solid pieces. But out of those 5 teams, the Bulls and the Hornets, I think, would be 2 teams to watch out for. And I would love the Hornets to make it. I forget the name of their announcer. Let's see. Charlotte Hornets announcer. I should know this. Sean Parker? Eric Collins. Getting more Eric Collins, postseason Eric Collins, consistently would be incredible. He's just electric. Must watch TV. Must listen. But yeah, those are the teams that got missing out in the East: Bulls, Nets, Raptors, Wizards, and Hornets. Let's move over to the Western Conference. Ridiculous. There's going to be really good teams that miss in the Western Conference. But let's shift over. Let's talk some West. I had a really tough time filling out predictions for the West. It is a very well-rounded conference right now. There's a lot of good teams. There's going to be good teams that miss the playoffs. The end of last season, some of the less competitive teams went on a run. So Western Conference, just know I had to leave some good teams out, and that's just how it is in the West. Good teams are going to miss. Starting out with first place, I have them repeating as regular season Western Conference champs. The OKC Thunder, they're a young roster. I think they're only going to continue to improve, and I think the additions of Hartenstein and Caruso, great defensive additions. Last year they were already 4th in defensive rating, and Hartenstein, Caruso, on paper they only got better defensively. In second place in the West, I have the Mavericks moving up from 5th. Luka, Kyrie, Clay, PJ Washington, and then one of Daniel Gafford, Derek Lively. I think that's a very solid lineup. Clay didn't look great in the preseason, but I do think he's going to figure out how to fit into that lineup. And especially with Luka, like there were a couple of games that Luka wasn't playing, or did Luka play? Luka's going to be in there with Clay a lot, and I think that's going to open up some spacing and get Clay a lot of open shots. And I think with Luka and Kyrie, like you got to double team one, if not both of them. So there's going to be an open shooter on the floor. I think the Mavericks, they pick up where they left off going to the finals and have another great season. So I have the Mavericks finishing in second in the Western Conference. In third, I've got the New Orleans Pelicans. They were in 7th last year, so they'll play in. I have them moving up to third, yes, because of DeJounte Murray, but for me, mainly, I think Zion's going to be a beast this year. When he's on the floor, he can be so dominant, and obviously the health being on the floor is the issue there. But I think he has a good year, dominates, and DeJounte Murray, great addition. I will say at their center position, a little worried there. Daniel Tice is the main center, or Trey Jemison, or Missy, not sure on that one. So they are definitely undersized at the center position, which is unfortunate because they gave up some great centers, Valanciunas and Larry Nance Jr. So they went from being very strong at center to very thin. So curious to see how that goes, but I think if Zion has a great year, I see the Pelicans moving up to third. Somebody has to elevate in the Western Conference. In fourth, I have them dropping down from second last year, the Denver Nuggets. I think they still won a lot of games, but I do think there's just some really hungry teams in the West. So I see the Nuggets dropping down a little bit, but I do think they hopefully get back to playing I guess they finished second. They didn't play bad basketball, but hopefully they do come out with a chip on their shoulder, play super hungry, and win a lot of games because the league is very exciting when Jokic and the Nuggets are really good. In fifth, I have them elevating quite a bit. The Warriors, this is probably hopeful thinking. I don't care. I think the league is more exciting when the Warriors are good. They finished 10th last year. Steph and Draymond, I think will have a little bit more late career urgency and a desire to prove that they can still do this without Clay. So I think they come out and play very focused and driven during the regular season to set up a strong postseason run. And I do think the younger core could take a leap, that being Moses Moody, Jonathan Kuminga, Trace Jackson Davis, and Pajimski. They have a super solid young core, added some key pieces with the Anthony Melton, Kyle Anderson, and Buddy Hield. Buddy Hield looked awesome in the preseason. I mean, he couldn't miss. Let's look up Buddy Hield preseason. Although I've had a hard time finding preseason stats. He was shooting something stupid like 45+% in the preseason. I'll have to find that at some point. But Buddy Hield looks awesome. Super excited for the Warriors. I see them moving up to fifth. Maybe wishful thinking. I don't care. In sixth, I have the Timberwolves dropping down from third last year. This one I could look stupid on. I could see Anthony Edwards still propelling them to be a top 2, top 3 team in the West. But I'm curious on the Anthony Edwards and Julius Randle pairing. I do like the grittiness of Julius Randle, but I think they might end up missing the floor spacing that Towns had. And yes, they got Dante DiVincenzo, which great shooter, but it's not necessarily the big that is spacing it out. So I'm very curious how that one goes. I do think they drop down a little bit. Still very electric. Anthony Edwards, pretty much every single game is at least watching highlights for him because he's just so electric, so much fun to watch. In seventh, so now in the play-in, I have the Lakers moving up from eighth. AD can still be dominant. LeBron can still be dominant. And I do think LeBron will be a little bit more energized having Bronny around. Curious if Bronny's going to be on the roster or playing in the G League. But either way, I think LeBron gets re-energized a little bit having Bronny around. Also, if Jared Vanderbilt and Christian Wood come back, that could be a big factor in the Lakers. They could improve a lot with those, especially Vanderbilt. He does so much defensively, really, for any team he's on. So if he comes back and is healthy and gets a lot of minutes, I think he could elevate what the Lakers do this season. Second unit, there is afraid of a little bit of drop off there, but yeah, with AD and LeBron, who knows what can happen there. In eighth, I have the Suns moving down from sixth. This is one, and this happens with a bunch of teams here in the West. There's just so many good teams. I'm going to be wrong on something. So I could be really far off on this one. I could see the Suns being top 3. I could see them finishing eighth. Devin Booker, Kevin Durant, Bradley Beal. If they all 3 have great years, top 3. But we'll see what happens. I do like the move of getting Mike Budenholzer. I think he'll reinvigorate the Suns. But this is one, honestly, probably could flip-flop the Suns and the Warriors 5 and 8. But I'm going to keep the Warriors at 5th. I'm going to speak it into existence. I want the Warriors to be really good this year. In ninth, I have the Kings. They were ninth last year. I'm curious to see how DeMar DeRozan fits in with the Kings' play style. Last year, they were kind of middle of the pack in pace. I forget what it was exactly. They were either 15th or 16th in pace, I think. And I would think that adding DeMar DeRozan would slow down that pace more. But in the preseason, I mean, he looked great in the preseason, knocking down mid-range. And even if it's just adding a veteran presence, I think having DeMar in there is a great addition. But I do have the Kings maintaining at ninth. It's just very competitive Western Conference. In 10th place, the last play-in spot, I have the Spurs moving up. Now, that leaves out some really good teams. But the reason I have the Spurs in here, I think Chris Paul and Wemby, I think that takes them from 22 wins last year at least to 35. And you're going to need some more wins than that to get in the play-in. But I think just that alone, Chris Paul and Wemby, 22 to 35. But I love the addition of Harrison Barnes. Get some veteran talent with Chris Paul in there as well. Devin Vassell hopefully comes back from injury. I think he's going into his 5th year. He can be very potent offensively. And Keldon Johnson, I don't know. I think adding Chris Paul, Harrison Barnes, Wemby obviously improving going into year 2. I think the Spurs won a lot of games. And once they figure out how to use Wemby, which Chris Paul I think will do, I think the Spurs win a lot of games this year, at least way more than last year from 22 wins. So I have the Spurs moving into 10th. And the teams that leaves out, we got the Trailblazers, the Jazz, the Rockets, the Clippers, and the Grizzlies. Now, 3 of these teams I think not even playing. I think they could be playoff teams. The Grizzlies, the Clippers, and the Rockets. The Grizzlies obviously getting back Ja Morant. The Clippers, I think they could be. James Harden still, I think he gives you a chance. The Rockets, they were really hot at the end of last season. So those 3 teams could easily be, I think, in the top 6. They could easily be in the play-in. But this is just a case of the Western Conference being completely stacked. Good teams are going to miss out on the play-ins completely, much less the top 6. It is the Western Conference is so stacked, and the Eastern Conference as well. I think it improved this season, and it became a more competitive conference. But the West right now, it's going to come down to the last week of the season as far as seeing who gets in, who moves out of the play-in into the actual 1 through 6 top 6 seeding, and who falls out. So I'm so excited to see the playoff race. But those are my predictions. I'm sure I'll be way off on a lot of these, but this is me calling my shot on Eastern and Western Conference playoff predictions. Let's lob it over and talk some regular season award predictions. So we're going to be talking MVP, Rookie of the Year, Sixth Man, Most Improved, Defensive Player of the Year, and then closing out with Clutch Player of the Year. Although I don't know if we'll exactly do it in that order. But those are the awards we'll be talking about. Last year's winners, we had Clutch Player of the Year, Steph Curry, Defensive Player of the Year, Rudy Gobert, Most Improved, Tyrese Maxey, Sixth Man was Naz Reid, Rookie of the Year was Wembanyama, and then MVP was Nikola Jokic. So let's start. We might actually go in reverse order. Let's start off with Clutch Player of the Year. I'm going to go for a repeat here. Steph Curry. I think Warriors are going to play a ton of close games. That's just how they've been playing the past couple of years, where it feels like every game they play is close. And let's see how does the NBA define a clutch game? Clutch time is defined as minutes when the scoring margin is within 5 points with 5 or fewer minutes remaining in the game. So 5 minutes or less, and the game is within 5 points. So I think the Warriors will play a ton of those games, and I think especially coming off of the Olympic games, which Curry was so electric. The Serbia match and then the gold medal match they were a spiritual experience. So I think Curry rides the high of that. He's still one of the top players in the league. I think with the combination of Warriors just not blowing out a ton of people or getting blown out usually, I think Curry repeats as Clutch Player of the Year. Defensive Player of the Year, I'm not going to go against the grain on this one. This one feels like a gimme, feels like a layup right now. I think Victor Wembanyama wins Defensive Player of the Year. Feels like that's the clear choice at the moment. Read that he added, I don't know where I got this information, but 25 pounds in the offseason. Really, maybe not this season, but I'm really hoping that Wemby has like a Giannis transformation where he comes back just absolutely yoked. Because if that happens, the league is very, very in trouble. Most improved, I have Jonathan Kuminga. Last year, he averaged 16 points, little under 5 rebounds, and 2 assists, and that was in 26 minutes. I think he will get more minutes this year, mainly because of the departure of Clay. I think that frees up a lot of minutes. But I think he could have career highs in all those categories. I don't think it's very completely outlandish to say he scores 20, 10, and 5. The 10 rebounds, I could be off, but I think he does elevate a little bit, increase from his 5 rebounds last year. So maybe 10 is, I'm not saying outlandish. If he does 20, 10, and 5, I think he will absolutely be Most Improved Player of the Year. At the time of doing this was a few weeks ago when I had these up, but he currently had the third lowest odds on DraftKings, and not currently, that was 1 or 2 weeks ago, behind Evan Mobley and Victor Wembanyama. So Wemby had the best odds, plus 750, Mobley plus 1100, and then Kuminga was third with plus 1400. Moving on to Sixth Man of the Year. I feel good about this one. I think Russell Westbrook, he embraces his role off the bench, I think he did with the Clippers, but I think him playing with Jokic, I think that's going to be great for Westbrook. I think he has an incredible year. I think Westbrook and Jokic will elevate each other, or at least I think Jokic will elevate Westbrook. But I think he'll come in and play some really meaningful minutes, and I think the Nuggets will win a lot of games, which I think Westbrook will benefit from in the six-man race. So I don't know, I feel good about that. Westbrook, six-man of the year. At the time that I looked these up, which again was a week or two ago, Westbrook had the 12th lowest odds on DraftKings at plus 2,000. So a little bit of a long shot, but I'm going Russell Westbrook, six-man of the year. Rookie of the year, there's some good options. Dillingham, Shepard, Connect, Sarr. I was ready to say Connect after he had his 35-point outburst in the preseason game. But I think I'm going to go, I'm going to go Dillingham. My reasoning, I think the Timberwolves will be a competitive team this year and win a lot of games. But I also think Dillingham's going to get a lot of coverage because of playing with Anthony Edwards. I think Dillingham will be electric as well. Connect, you could say the same thing, playing with Anthony Davis and LeBron and being with the Lakers. But I think Dillingham, I just think he's going to have an electric year, will be a focal point, especially with Conley getting a little bit older. Not a little bit older. He's pretty old. Sorry, Mike Conley, if you see this. I don't think you will. You definitely won't. But if you did, you're young. You're so young. You play young. Anyways, moving on. Rob Dillingham, I think he's going to be the rookie of the year in Minnesota. Kentucky boy. Let's go. And then finally, we've got MVP. So, originally I said, in my mind, okay, my MVP is going to be Luka Doncic. Let's just put it out there so I get it out there. Luka Doncic, I think he's going to win MVP. He's going to have crazy stat lines. I think going to the finals last year, that will elevate his chances, improve his chances to win MVP. And I think this goes along with me thinking the Mavs will finish second. Did I say second? I'm pretty sure, yes. Mavericks, I think, are going to finish second in the West. And I think with them winning a lot of games, combined with Luka having these crazy stat lines, I think Luka's going to go over that line and he's going to finish first in the MVP race. And I think you could have made the argument last year, especially after the fact, taking the Mavericks to the finals. I think this is the year Luka does it and he wins the MVP. At the time that I looked these up, again, probably 2 weeks ago, lowest odds on DraftKings at plus 370. He was in front of Jokic. It was close at the time, plus 400. And Shea was plus 500. Maybe we could do a little. Let's look it up. Doncic MVP odds. So according to, let's go odds shark, pulling out one. Luka, yep, it's pretty similar. Luka plus 330, shortest odds. SGA plus 410, and then Jokic plus 480. And then going down the line for MVP odds, we've got Giannis, Anthony Edwards, he's up there. Jalen Brunson. Jalen Brunson, honestly, was almost one of my picks. I think the Knicks, especially if they finish first in the East, like I think they will. I think that could be a great one. Tatum plus 1,300. Wembanyama plus 2,000. I think they'd have to win a lot of games. I do have them winning more games, but I don't know that they win enough to do that. Joel Embiid plus 2,400. I think with the back-to-back thing, that's probably not super likely. Ja Morant, that could be a huge resurgence. He's plus 3,000. Steph Curry plus 4,500. Would love to see that. Kevin Durant, Zion, Devin Booker. Okay. Tyrese Halliburton. We're at plus 10,000 now. So Devin Booker and Tyrese Halliburton both plus 10,000. Jaylen Brown. It'd be so funny if Jaylen Brown leapfrogged. So Jaylen Brown's at plus 10,000. Jason Tatum's at plus 1,300. That'd be a crazy jump. Anyways, we will wrap up the show. If you stuck around till now, I appreciate you watching. We're finally here. NBA Week 1. We got 6 months of basketball, 6, 7, maybe even 8 months of basketball. It might be 8. we got a lot of basketball ahead of us. The world is our oyster. Cannot wait for regular season to start. Thank you for watching. If you're not subscribed to the channel yet, go and join the team. With that being said, I'll catch you in the next video.